The news landed like a body blow, rattling the foundations of a sporting empire. Imagine you've poured your passion, your summers, your very identity into a team only to read a headline stark and brutal declaring that your team, is dead. Not just losing a game, not just a bad season, but wiped from existence. This wasn't some minor local club folding, this was the Melbourne Stars and the Melbourne Renegades. Two pillars of the Big Bash League gone. The reason? A cold hard business decision, a privatisation move, as the papers called it, stripping away the colour and camaraderie that so many Melburnians had come to cherish. For countless fans across the sprawling suburbs of Melbourne, from the inner city terraces to the bungalows of Frankston and the new estates out past Melton, this wasn't just about cricket. It was about community identity. And the unsettling realization that even something as seemingly sacrosanct as a beloved sports team could be sacrificed on the altar of corporate ambition. For years the Big Bash League had carved out its own unique space in the Australian summer. It wasn't just cricket, it was an event. Families flocked to Marvel Stadium and the MCG, bathed in the twilight glow, cheering on their stars in their vibrant green or their Renegades in bold red. These teams weren't just collections of players, they were institutions. The Stars, with their galaxy motif, had captured the imagination of the city's east, drawing crowds from Hawthorn, Camberwell and even further afield. Their merchandise a common sight at suburban barbecue gatherings. The Renegades, in contrast, often seen as the scrappier, more resilient outfit, resonated with the working-class heartland of the West and North. Their supporters travelling in droves from Footscray, Broadmeadows and Sunbury. They embodied a friendly yet fierce cross-city rivalry that added flavour to every summer's evening. Cricket Victoria, the state's governing body for the sport, had nurtured both franchises from their inception, seeing them as integral to growing the game, particularly amongst younger audiences. Their chief executive, Nick Cummins, had often spoken of the dual team model as a success, a way to double engagement, double the fan base, and double the revenue flowing back into grassroots cricket across Victoria. Life for these teams and their loyal followings was predictable, patterned by the rhythm of summer. Until that fateful Wednesday. The incident that plunged Melbourne's Big Bash world into chaos began with a series of quiet, closed-door meetings, discussions about the future of Australian cricket and, more specifically, the financial viability of its most popular domestic T20 competition. The Big Bash League, despite its popularity, had been grappling with a complex financial model. And the idea of privatisation, selling off stakes in the teams to private investors, had been gaining traction within the higher echelons of Cricket Australia. The belief was that private ownership would inject much-needed capital, streamline operations and potentially unlock new revenue streams. Cricket Victoria, as an affiliate body, found itself in a difficult position. They were under pressure to align with the national strategy and critically to demonstrate their own financial sustainability. This is where the grim arithmetic started. Operating two distinct BBL franchises with their separate player rosters, coaching staff, administrative teams and marketing budgets represented a significant ongoing cost. The decision, as later confirmed by CEO Nick Cummins, was that Cricket Victoria could no longer sustain the operational burden of two teams within a privatised league structure. On that Wednesday, in a terse media release that shocked the sporting world, Cummins announced the unthinkable: both the Melbourne Stars and the Melbourne Renegades would cease to exist in their current form. Cricket Victoria would instead consolidate its efforts behind a single new BBL team which, speculatively, might resurrect the historic Bushrangers moniker. The second franchise that would be sold off entirely to a private investor and assets stripped and sold to raise funds. It was a purely economic decision presented as a necessary evil for the long-term health of the sport, but for the thousands of fans, players and staff it felt like a betrayal. The specific date of this announcement, June 3, would forever be etched in the memory of Melbourne cricket fans as the day the music died. The legal and ethical implications of this move, whilst perhaps not a direct, tribunal battle, in the traditional sense, sparked a furious public debate and raised serious questions about governance, consumer rights and the very concept of a fair go in Australian sport. Fans, many of whom had purchased multi-year memberships, merchandise and invested deeply in the brand identities of the Stars and Renegades, felt completely blindsided. What about their loyalty programs, their season ticket packages, their branded gear now rendered obsolete? While Cricket Victoria might argue this was an organisational restructuring for consumers, it felt like a breach of an unwritten contract, a gutting of their cherished sporting experience. Questions immediately arose concerning consumer protections under the Australian consumer law, specifically Schedule 2 of the Competition and Consumer Act 2010. Were fans entitled to refunds for future memberships? What recourse did they have if their significant investment in team merchandise now felt worthless? Consumer Affairs Victoria would undoubtedly be inundated with inquiries. Beyond consumer rights, there was the human element, the players, many of whom had built their careers around these specific teams, suddenly faced an uncertain future. While the Fair Work Act 2009 governs employment relations, the unique nature of professional sports contracts added layers of complexity. Would players be absorbed into the new single entity, or would they be forced to re-enter the draft, potentially uprooting their lives? The moral complexity here was profound. Cricket Victoria believed they were acting in the best long-term interests of the game, securing its financial future. But by doing so they inflicted immediate tangible harm on the emotional and financial investments of thousands of ordinary Australians. There was no single court case to capture the outrage, but rather a decentralised wave of anger and disappointment, a collective sense of injustice echoing across the city. The resolution, if it could even be called that, was a bitter pill for many. Cricket Victoria pressed ahead with its plan. The Melbourne Stars and Melbourne Renegades as distinct entities with their own colours, logos and histories were effectively dissolved. The new consolidated Victorian BBL team, provisionally dubbed the Victorian Bushrangers, in a nod to the state's long-standing first-class team, was established. Its colours and branding were fresh, designed to appeal to a broad base, but for many former Stars and Renegades supporters it felt like a manufactured entity, devoid of the genuine rivalry and identity that had defined the previous decade. The second franchise, the one that was to be sold off, attracted interest from several private consortiums, both local and international. The sale process was complex, involving intricate valuations and negotiations over broadcast rights and player contracts. Ultimately, a private equity firm with a significant portfolio in global sports based out of Sydney acquired the rights to operate the second Melbourne franchise. This new privately owned team, still without a name at the time of the announcement, would enter the BBL from the following season, competing against Cricket Victoria's Bushrangers. For fans it meant choosing a side, either the new state-backed entity or the privately owned newcomer, or abandoning the BBL entirely. Refunds were offered for unfulfilled multi-year memberships, but the emotional cost was immeasurable. while Cricket Victoria argued they had secured millions in new funding for grassroots cricket and ensured the financial stability of the BBL in Victoria. The outcome left a sour taste. Was justice served financially, perhaps for the sports administrators? Emotionally, for the thousands of Melburnians who'd lost their teams, it felt like a profound compromise, a triumph of corporate strategy over community spirit. What does this mean for everyday